Good day everyone! We are the Group 2 and we will be discussing the week 4 and 5 unit learning outcomes. By the way, I am Altrigal Therapin Pena. I will be discussing the ULU A with Urbi Jennifer Lino and Norfa Balade. But before that, let's define first these important terms as we go through the study of cognitive process and prior knowledge. So let's start! Week 4 unit learning outcome. The table of contents. What is cognition? Cognition, also known as our thinking. This refers to our mental abilities such as perceiving, attending, remembering, memorizing, and problem solving. Cognitive is a mental manipulations of images, concepts, words, rules, symbols, and precepts. It involves attention, pattern, recognition, memory, decision making, intuition, and knowledge. Furthermore, it is an intellectual functioning of the mind with regards in the learner's ability to recall informations. Learning is an example of cognition. Give you a concrete example. Asking students to reflect on their experiences. That's a cognition. Helping students to find new solutions on their problem. That's also a cognition. What is cognitive process? Cognitive process refers to ability to take information and transform it, store, retrieve, and put it to work for any mental process. Cognitive process involves changes in the individual's thought, intelligence, and language. For example, Maria and Mario develop from mere sound to a word and becoming two words, then the two words becoming a sentence. Then they would move on to memorizing their first prayer, singing Lupang Hinirang in Ever Flag ceremony, imagining what it would be like to be a teacher or pilot, playing chess, and solving a complex math problem. That's a cognitive process. Moving on, the following terms will be used. This will give you an idea engaging different facets of classroom management. The cognitive processes of experts in expert system. The first one is special knowledge. This focuses on what experts know more about a certain topic than other people. Experts have more strategies to use to acquire knowledge and use them in a meaningful way. It includes a range of factual, theoretical, and political knowledge, as well as competencies and skills in a particular discipline or profession. For example, experts made a deep personal commitment to develop and improve their skills. They have certifications or degrees that serves them as the foundation of this knowledge. And also, for example, a student use their specialized knowledge to understand the field and interconnectedness and limits. They almost 50 years mastering a specific body of information related to a particular type of work or professions. That's a special knowledge. The second one is the domain specificity. Deals with experts' ability to extend and advance their thinking because they seem to produce sets where the problems are or can be represented. Experts develop their competence in various areas of knowledge, such as in math and science. According to Noam Chomsky, that domain specificity, also known as domain-specific learning. The domain specificity can be learned, witness, evidence for localized brain areas observing learned tasks such as reading or writing. The third is the analogical reasoning. It deals with the expert's ability to use their domains and specific knowledge in other situations. Reasoning by analogy is another feature of human memory. According to Jean Piaget, analogical reasoning is the ability to perceive the relationship in one instance and use the relationship to narrow down possible answers in similar problems. For example, is that when a person has a bad experiences with the product and decided not to buy anything from the producers because he or she don't want to be a victim again, and he used analogical reasoning. The fourth is the expert system. expert system deals with a strategy such as chunking of facts and information into higher orders tasks that require well-organized rules and schemas. Expert system can also make use of combination of problem-solving strategies such as forward search and backward search. Expert systems are designed to solve complex problem by reasoning through bodies of knowledge represented mainly as if-then rules. Example is car engine fault diagnosis. A car mechanics often use expert system to diagnose faults with the car engines. That's an expert system. Moving on to the basic unit of cognition. One of the major ways our cognition allows us to do that is by forming concepts. The first basic unit of cognition is the concepts. Concepts are the building blocks of cognition. They are general labels that we attach to categories of things and information that share common characteristics. A concept's generalized idea representing a category or a class of object or events grouped together on some basis. These are the powerful tools because it allows us to think abstractly to also avoid distracting details. For example, like dog, home, or fruit can mean many things, but classifying them allow us to save space in our memory and to quickly make assumptions, predictions, and generalizations about the world around us. Take the word dog, for example. Instead of telling you to imagine a dog coming up to you, I could have said, there's a four-legged thing with a wagging tail and fur that comes up and barks at you. But that's a lot of words. It's much simpler to fall back on the concepts of dog, knowing that when I say dog, you'll imagine all those things, four legs, a tail, fur, and barking. This because all of those characteristics are associated with the concept of dog. That's a concept. Concepts are arranged in a hierarchy called the conceptual domains. These domains are the superordinate, the basic, and the subordinate. The first one is the superordinate concepts. These are the most general way to classify something. It is at the base because there are a lot of things that can fall under a subordinate concepts. For example, a vehicle. A vehicle can be a car, the truck, or a bus. The second one is the basic concepts. Above the superordinate concepts are basic concepts, which are more specific than superordinate concepts. What do I mean by more specific? Whenever you think of a concept, think of the features. A basic concepts will have you more features than a superordinate concepts. For example, as what I have said earlier, that a vehicle can be a car or a bus, or it could be a truck. Thus, the subordinate concepts is more specific than the basic concepts. Subordinate means under the control of something else, and that makes sense when you think of subordinate concepts. For example, a car, what we call the basic concepts, can you say that what are types of car? Can be a sports car. Also the bus, it can be a coaster or a shuttle. And also the truck can be a dump. And that's a superordinate concepts. The second basic unit of cognition is the propositions. These are the composed or related concepts. These are units of declarative knowledge that can stand alone as separate assertions about the observed experiences, events, or the relationships among concepts. Concepts and proposition is somewhat related. As what I have said, that a concept is a combination of a word, spoken or written, and an idea which its meaning. While a proposition is a combination of ideas, and a statement is a combination of concepts which expresses those ideas. For example, in a proposition is when the statements like all equilateral triangles are equiangular. It states that the proposition that relates the ideas in the concepts of triangle are equilateral and equiangular. That's a propositions. The third one is the schemata. It is the general knowledge structures used for understanding. A schema is an organizational pattern of the mind. Schemata are mental frameworks or the concepts we use to organize and understand the world. We use schemata every day. If you see an animal, you can quickly decide if it's bird, mammal, or reptile, or fish. These basic animal concepts are schemata. Other example, when you go to a restaurant, you have a certain orders or events that you expect to happen. That's because you have a schema for the concepts of restaurant. We have a schemata for every important category of structure that exists in the world. Within schemata, there can be levels of organizations or informations. Schema possesses the following characteristics. As what I have said, that schema are the basic knowledge. They are highly structured. They are general categories of knowledge. They are use and comprehension. The fourth is the productions. These are things made or created which are composed of our knowledge on how to follow series of step-by-step procedures. This refers to the knowledge of how to perform a specific skill or test and is considered knowledge related to methods, procedures, operations, or equipment. Procedural knowledge is also referred to as an implicit knowledge or know-how. For example, a person riding a bicycle. When someone was teaching you how to ride a bicycle, no matter what they said, you probably struggled to grasp it until you'd actually done it a few times. Once you figured it out, it quickly became implicit knowledge. That is, then, the type of knowledge that is hard to explain as it is subconsciously stored in your mind. The fifth is the scripts. These are the knowledge representations that sets the framework for procedural knowledge. These are also used for our experience, which represents the clusters of past and present events so that we may interpret future events and occurrences. A script is a very specific schema for a particular order of expected events in a particular context. For example, when you go to a fast food restaurant, you walk in, you stand in line at one of the registers. You stared at the big menu above the register that has pictures of the food. Then you get to the register, order your food, and pay. After that, you get your food on a tray, walk over the side, and fill your drink cup and ketchup containers. You walk around the molded plastic chairs until you find a place to eat. Our script tells us what to expect in this particular context. Just like a script in a place tells the actors exactly what to say and do. That's a script.
Hi everyone, I'm Nerfa Balaji and I'm going to discuss the role of prior knowledge in learning and learning as conceptual change. So what is prior knowledge? Prior knowledge, it is a mental structure that describes our knowledge and experiences gained during the course of our life and how old experiences are used to understand new ones. In education, prior knowledge is the learning that a child gathers before entering a classroom for the first time. For instance, one child may enter kindergarten having already learned to identify different colors and to count to 10, based on their activities at home with a caretaker before entering school. Meanwhile, another child might already know the whole alphabet and be able to write their name because of the prior knowledge they have accumulated in advance of kindergarten, and third child might have gathered a lot of prior knowledge in the form of social skills, sharing, collaborating, and communicating desires and needs. Next is schemata. These are cognitive structures that help us make sense of the world around us. These are discrete abstract structures with respect to previous action or experiences. Schemata is a plural form of schema. For example, when a fire alarm goes off, you should leave the building. This might seem like common sense, but at one point you didn't know what such a signal meant. You learned through experience and retained the information through schema. So let's proceed to strategies for developing prior knowledge. First is advanced organizers. So what is advanced organizer? It is a tool that teacher can present to students prior to a lecture to help them structure the information they are about to learn. So this is the example of advanced organizers. Teacher use advanced organizers to introduce a lesson and guide kids on how to think about it. Much like good movie trailer. An advanced organizer gives kids a preview of what's to come and gets them interested in seeing more. It is also works by helping kids link what they already know with what they're about to learn. Second is conceptual and pedagogical models. To make the instructional materials meaningful, we can utilize the pedagogical and conceptual models. Conceptual models are abstract psychological representation of how tasks should be carried out. It is also consists of concepts used to help people know, understand, or simulate a subject the model represents. It is also a set of concepts. And pedagogical model describes what effective teachers do in their classroom to engage students in intellectually challenging work. It also provides an overview of the learning cycle and breaks it down into 5 domain or phase of instruction: engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. The pedagogical model domains are elements of one complete model of teaching rather than separate, self-contained components. Third is chunking. Chunking means collecting different parts of chunks of information and grouping them in a larger piece of information. For example, a cell phone number like 093626058669 that can further be chunked into 3 groups like 0936, 260, 5869 and quickly retained and recalled. Another example is when you go to the market and you have to buy number of things like carrots, chicken, potatoes, toothpaste, and etc. If you chunk these into groups, you can easily remember the foods that you need to buy. Next is outlining. Outlining is a tool used to organize your written ideas about a topic into a logical order. It is a way for you to demonstrate the argument, main points, and main pieces of evidence you are going to present in a paper before actually writing in the paper. 3 types of outlining. First is alphanumeric outline. Alphanumeric outline uses numbers, letters, and periods to organize information. Second is full sentence outline. This outline is most often used when preparing a traditional essay. The full sentence outline is essentially the same as the alphanumeric outline. The main difference is that full sentences are required at each level of the outline. Third is decimal outline. Decimal outline is a form of outlining that shows how every part of a paper relates to the rest of the paper. Next is highlighting. Another way to help students learn better is through highlighting, in which students can easily locate the most important points in the lesson. When reading is necessary for work or study, a helpful way of making important information in a text stand out is to mark it with a pen. In this way, helps you to think carefully about the main points in the text. Last is questioning. We need to give them guide questions before we expose them to that certain task. We structure these questions by considering the various types of question and that information we want them to learn.
So hello everyone, this is Robbie Jane and this is the continuation about the discussion of neurofibology. And I will be discussing about the analogical processes and transfer of learning. Number 12, analog. It is a referent or equivalent cognitive information in the brain what can easily be accessed or mapped when needed. Analogical process or thinking refers to our ability to perceive and use relational similarity. In addition, analog is a thing or person that is like something else in some ways. Example: a cherry is red, sweet, and is a fruit like an apple. So a cherry is an example of an analog to an apple. Number 13. Analogical reasoning, a method of information processing that requires the comparison of related features between the old and new concept information. Processing develops by identifying the new idea to be learned target domain. So why is analogical reasoning is important? So, analogies can serve a variety of functions. They may provide us with an opportunity to form new inductive inferences about a novel situation. Such is the case in scientific studies. Analogies can also be used to help convince, clarify, or to inform us. Example: to argue with analogy is to argue that because two things are similar, What is true of one is also true of the other. Such arguments are called analogical arguments or arguments by analogy. Here are some examples. There might be life on Europa because it has an atmosphere that contains oxygen just like the Earth. So here's the analogical processes including the following. Number 14. Retrieval. Prior similar or analogous material may be retrieved from long-term memory system. So what is retrieval? So, it is the act of getting something back or of accessing stored data and files in a computer. As an example of retrieval is when you lose your keys down an elevator shaft and you get your maintenance man to help you to get them back. Number 15. The mapping. This involves discovering which elements of the Nobel problem corresponds to elements in the stored analog. Representational structures must be aligned with each other. Number 16. Access. Access involves retrieval of a familiar analog or other information from long-term memory when represented with a novel problem. 17. Representation. This involves the adaptation of one or both representations to improve image. So, representation is the act of speaking on someone's behalf or depicting or portraying something. Example number 1. When a lawyer acts on behalf of a client, this is an example of representation. And example number 2. When you make a drawing of your mother that is meant to look like her, this is an example of a representation of your mother. Last, 18. Evaluation involves at least the 3 kinds of judgments. First, the structural soundness. Second, factual correctness. And third, the relevance. To evaluate is to define as to judge the value of worth of someone or something. So here's the example of evaluate. When a teacher reviews a paper in order to give it to a grade. Second, to draw conclusions from examining. And third, to assess it will help and to take several years to evaluate the material gathered in the survey.
Next topic is explain how transfer of learning and metacognitive process aid in learning. Transfer learning considered as the effect of prior learning, Mayer 2011. Transfer can be extended from the original context to the new one. However, some bits of knowledge are embedded in single context. Students fail to transfer what they know because sometimes they are confined to a single context in which knowledge is acquired. Lack of conditional knowledge. The word conditional means contingent, dependent, or provisional. For transfer to occur, students should know when and where to use their knowledge in a meaningful context. Inaccurate conceptions of the mind. This accounts for how students view their minds in relation to learning. Lack of metacognition. When students do not possess the ability to think how their thought process develop, or if they lack the ability to regulate and monitor their own thoughts, they cannot afford to develop transfer. 2 types of transfer: positive transfer, negative transfer. Positive transfer, this occurs when students have the ability to harness strong association for some recall in the future. If they can use what they have learned in new situations, there is positive learning. For example, learning of mathematical principles enables the learner to acquire principles in physics. There are many illustrations of positive transfer in the school setting, which can be mentioned here. For example, learning grammar in any language and writing composition in the language. Negative transfer. This occurs when students find 2 events or items similar when in fact they are not. In other words, negative transfer happens when 2 materials are different. For example, If a learner is introduced to two new languages which are similar at the same time, negative transfer occur. Types of learning transfer according to Robert Gagne. Vertical transfer occurs when complex skills are more easily learned because of simple skills that are acquired. For example, when a pupil masters simple grammatical rules, he is enabled to speak correct English, write competently, and to study other subjects in English as well. Lateral transfer refers to students' ability to generalize knowledge or skill to a novel situation. There are 4 ways to promote transfer of learning: 1. Similarity, 2. Association, 3. Degree of original learning, and 4. Critical attributes. 1. Similarity. Transfer can be generated by the similarity of a given learning situation. If something is being learned, that learning can also be used in another similar situation. Association. Two feelings, events, or actions are held together if they have established their relationship or association. If they have created their special power to form associations, they can create a special bond that makes them inseparable. Third, degree of learning. It means that everything we do falls within the range or degree of performance. A certain activity may be categorized as easy, average, or difficult. The fourth one, and the last, critical attributes. Another way through which effective transfer may be promoted is through critical attributes. Attributes are qualities or things that are caused by certain circumstances.
What is metacognition? Metacognition, coined by John Flavel, refers to the learner's understanding and control of their cognitive processes. It is thinking about their own thinking. John Flavel, who is seen as a founding scholar of the field, said that metacognition is the knowledge you have of your own cognitive processes. It is your ability to control your thinking processes through various strategies, such as organizing, monitoring, and adapting. Additionally, it is your ability to reflect upon the tasks or processes you undertake. Metacognition has 2 main components: students' knowledge and knowledge of learning. It is the strategies to use in particular learning situations. It refers to what learners know about learning. An individual's knowledge of strategies, how to use strategies, and when and why to use strategies. Cognitive monitoring, which includes students' ability to select, use, and monitor learning strategies that complement their learning styles and the specific situation. It describes how learners monitor and control their cognitive processes. For example, a learner might realize that a particular strategy is not achieving the results they want, so they decide to try a different strategy. There are 2 types of metacognition: the explicit and implicit metacognitive knowledge. The explicit metacognitive knowledge. This refers to the conscious factual knowledge. It involves information about tasks. For instance, it is easy to remember the major point in the selection rather than to memorize the entire text. Implicit metacognitive knowledge. In this type of knowledge, children learn how to monitor themselves. Self-monitoring skills lie at their decisive power to choose what and how much to study. A perfect example is about a child who continually monitoring his or her own speech. When the child makes a mistake when speaking, they will stop and say the sentence over again, but correctly. Essential skills for metacognition: planning, monitoring, and evaluating. Planning. It is a form of decision-making. Planning allows us to decide on various aspects: the time to be spent in accomplishing the task, steps to follow, or what to give priority to. Let's say you are writing your first book. It wouldn't be a smart move to simply get on with the first chapter. Instead, you should plan out and draft the outline of the book. Monitoring refers to one's special duty to be responsible. It entails a lot of checking, supervising, and seeing how the task progresses or develops. Given from the first example in writing your first book,
After planning, of course, you also need to monitor your progress as you go. You can track it by writing down what progress you are making. For example, how many words you are writing each week. Evaluating is developing a sound judgment about the process and outcomes of thinking if we fail to meet the needed standards. Given from the first example again, you need to evaluate your work as well. You could do that by reviewing your week's work each weekend to be sure that you are happy with the quality of your work. In the end, you need to be able to reflect on these steps as this will give you the ability to make adjustments to this process if needed. Here are the steps in metacognitive skills. First, diagnosis. Second, selection of appropriate strategies. Third, monitoring. And lastly, evaluation. Diagnosis. This means identifying the problem. When confronted with a problem, we estimate the level of its difficulty. Wherein the first thing that you will do is to examine and identify the problem, deciding what you need to learn, and then deciding how you are going to learn. That material will be your task. Selection of appropriate strategies comes next after we have diagnosed the material. To accomplish the task, we use a specific strategy. However, knowing what strategy to use is not enough. So, you will select a strategy that you will use in order to accomplish that certain goal. But remember, it wouldn't be enough. So, here comes the third thing that you will do. Monitor. This means keeping track of what we do and how well we are doing it. For example, if a certain strategy works best in a particular task, we tend to continue using it. Evaluation. This is the final step in the use of metacognitive skill. Evaluation means the act of examining or judging the worth of learning and the usability of the strategy. It involves reflection on how well you met your learning objectives after completing a unit of study or receiving feedback. Sample model for monitoring our thoughts. For metacognitive knowledge, understanding the blocks cognition, understanding interference, knowledge about effective memory strategies, knowledge of recall, understanding meaningful material, knowledge of making meaning connection, knowledge of prior knowledge activation, knowledge of effective transfer. For metacognitive skills and strategies, using repetition to aid comprehension and memory, paraphrasing information that aids recall and comprehension, using rehearsals and praxis, using categorization and chunking strategies, using self-test, using organizational skills, using comparison and contrast model, using personalization, visualization, and algorithmic approaches to problem-solving activities. For monitoring self-awareness activities, varying study and learning strategies to meet task demands, dividing study time effectively, having a sense of metacognitive awareness, directing self to positive performance, predicting successful performance, recording progress, engaging in basic self-evaluations, and using learning logs to monitor performance. Remember that metacognition has been linked to improve learning outcomes. It makes sense that individuals who are strategic in their learning are more successful than those who do not reflect on the learning process.
Good day to everyone. This is Judy Ann Rio Hilon, and I'm going to discuss the teacher strategies for facilitating the cognitive and metacognitive processes. First is rehearsal. Rehearsal is a cognitive process in which there is a conscious repetition of information over and over so that such information will dwell in the long-term memory. It is a form of practicing to ensure that all details are adequately prepared and coordinated. Next is elaborative rehearsal. What is elaborative rehearsal? It is when we use information for deep processing and use its meaning to help us store and remember it. It involves using concepts that are already in your long-term memory to remember concepts that are only in your short-term memory. Elaborative rehearsal is a very effective way of encoding information into long-term memory because it involves processing of information which increases the ability to recall information in a better way. So, there are suggested activities for rehearsal strategies. Here are the following. First, we have repetition and cumulative rehearsal. It refers to our ability to do or perform a series of motor movement or a list of words procedures. These are done from the simplest steps to the most complicated that build up mastery and efficiency. Repetition is the act of repeating, and cumulative is increasing in quantity. For example, when we're going to recite a poem, we read it repeatedly in order to memorize. First, we memorize the first stanza of the poem and add the next set and so on until we were able to memorize the whole poem. Another example is trying to learn the alphabet. When we were kids, we tried to listen and say it repeatedly until we were able to learn it. Questioning and answering are inseparable. Every question needs an answer, and also there are answers that have a follow-up questions. Predicting and clarifying. This accounts for our expectations of what will the teacher say or ask. We should anticipate what will transpire in the classroom interaction so that we can study in advance. Knowing or being able to be not confused or being able to have a strong belief on what will gonna happen will be a great strategy because you can be able to be prepared. Restarting and paraphrasing. It deals with our ability to put things in our own words and phrases, thereby connecting the information to our prior knowledge. It is restating someone else's idea in our own words. It's expressing someone else's ideas more clearly and more simply. These strategies help because it shows that we understand the topic well and enough to restate in our own words. Next is outlining and summarizing. These strategies help us create an overview of information as we reflect on its meaning. Outlining is often written in bullet points. It is the basic skeleton to which we will follow. It specifies which key ideas will be discussed and helps to construct and organize ideas in a sequential manner. And summarizing is always much shorter than the original text. It gives a concise overview of the main points of the topic. It simply gives clear and accurate information and ideas without missing any important details. Next is selecting. This helps us to decide on the things or ideas to be stored. Once we have chose those important ideas, we were going to focus on that ideas. Next is note-taking. It allows us to write important ideas, definitions, proportions, or concepts. Doing such accounts for proper strategy selection. It is recording information by taking notes gained from different sources such as lecture or presentations. Also, note-taking helps to remember information and support our understanding of that information. Underlining or highlighting. These strategies are effective enough when we mark important information in the text. It includes predicting and selecting. Underlining or highlighting is a strategy where only the keywords, phrases, and ideas that are central to understand the reading are being underlined or highlighted. This helps to be organized on what have been read by selecting what is important. Is clustering. When we cluster, we organize information to provide an ordering process that can include sequences, hierarchies, and categories. Clustering is grouping a set of objects in such a way that those objects in the same group or cluster are more similar to each other than to those in the other cluster. Lastly is elaboration. This occurs when we reach new information by adding extra information from our own schema. It is a process of linking information to remember information we already know. So there are two categories of elaboration, the verbal and image elaboration. Verbal elaboration is a questions that aim at drawing connection between the newly information learned and that which is already available in someone's knowledge, while visual elaboration is to create mental pictures or envision a place or event.